Since starting TennCom 4 years ago in January of 2022, I've slowly been reducing the weight of my racket. Now, I started the channel using a heavily customized Head Extreme Tour Graphene 360 Plus, leaded up, allegedly, to 360 grams. At some point since that original customization video, I've apparently removed some of the weight from that frame so it sits closer to 350. Later, I moved on to the Slinko Whiteout 18x20, which I used in various specs between 340 to 345 grams. Today, I use a much lighter and more powerful frame, the Pure Aero Racquet 290. When I first switched to it last year, I was using a way heavier spec at 339 grams, but today that number has fallen to 333. The reason I've gone down in weight by 30 grams over the last few years is because I just play better tennis. More specifically though, my priorities have changed. I'm playing a lot more tennis and I'm playing a lot more matches. I'm also in quite a bit better shape than I used to be. But I'd be lying if I told you that I did all of this on my own. I'm lucky to have shared my tennis racket journey with a man who shares his journey with all of you and has helped me to understand what I truly need from my frame. So this is my friend Allen. You probably know him as AC Tennis, and he is like my tennis racket review hero. He's always ahead of the curve on basically all racket testing in terms of swing feel, in terms of, I think, what the demands of the modern game are and how that relates to the best rackets that you can buy today. And he's made a pretty substantial racket switch over the last year. Would you tell us what you're using?
So I've been using, for a long time, I was using the Gravity Pro from the day it released. Basically, that was around 2019, I think. Once I got back into a lot of competitive match play this year, I kind of figured that I wasn't maybe strong enough, fast enough. So I kind of decided to go with the Yonex E-Zone 100L, which is the lighter variant of the E-Zone 100. And that's mainly because it kind of frees up a few variables that you wouldn't really think it could if you use the regular version, which depends on how strong of an individual you are. But there's a few things that I kind of haven't actually fleshed out myself in terms of how I think about it. It's just a lot of it was instinctual this year, where I just kind of like depended on how I played and how it affected my opponents and how it affected me personally.
So how many rackets do you think it took you to settle on the 100L? Was that Goldilocks on the first try, or did you have some sort of testing phase?
I went through a ton this year. I was using almost everything that I had personally that I collected over the years to see what would kind of suit me best. I was still using the Gravity to see, and it was giving me results still, but I felt in maybe long matches or big moments, it kind of fell flat for me just because of my physicality. I wasn't strong enough at the time. Maybe like at this point, I could do a bit better with all the matches under my belt and all the stamina that I've built over the year. But in terms of everything that I tested a lot from the V cores, all the E-Zones. I think we talked about me almost swapping to the E-Zone 98 Plus. Yeah. That was very close, but then I decided against it just because when it came to really, really difficult opponents, that it didn't quite work the same that I needed to. But opponents that were kind of more towards my level, then I could kind of get it to work and have some effectiveness there.
So what are the more difficult opponents doing to you to kind of put you off when you're using something more control-oriented?
Well, I think, most people probably don't know that I'm 34. I don't look like 34, but at this point where in the last, decade of my life that I haven't been treating my body great, I haven't been eating well, and more importantly that I've been injured a lot, that a lot of my speed and physicality was affected. So the thing is that they put a lot of pressure and take away time from me, so that I wouldn't be able to get to the ball on time, or if I did, like I wasn't getting enough of an effective shot back on defense or counter punching. So I needed to do things with my technique, plus also changes of equipment to kind of compensate for those weaknesses.
Right. So how does the intersection of moving to a lighter racket match with the technical changes you've made to your game?
Well, with the Gravity Pro, I think like I already was using a very light spec. It was about 323 grams strong, but it had a higher swing weight of about 335 to 338, depending on which variant of that model that I had. So that was giving me a lot of power and plow through when I could get my swing off. So the thing with the Gravity Pro is that you have to take a full wind up all the way to the back of the swing and then kind of like crush the ball. And simply, I just didn't have the time to kind of turn the racket and do all that stuff whilst, I'm under pressure. If someone's aggressing on me and moving me around, I just don't have the speed to get my racket back in time. So the technical changes that I changed to my forehand, for example, was that I shortened the swing and made it more efficient. So I used to start with a closed face, and now I kind of like start with a much more open face. And the reason for that is that I can kind of get the racket back and swing to contact without having to turn the racket so much. And then that would also delay my ability to hit cleaner at points. So that was one technical change. And another technical change was that I'm almost like taking the racket directly back to the swing with the open face and then just going straight forward into the ball. So that's more the technical parts. And then in terms of the equipment, I needed a racket that I could basically get back with a shorter, more efficient swing, but still power through the ball just as well as I wanted with the Gravity. So I needed more power in a shorter swing path, basically.
Yeah. So when you're, what kind of spec are you using now with this 100L?
It kind of changes at the moment. I'm still experimenting, but it's mostly a static weight that is always under the regular version of, say, 300 plus strings. So 300 plus strings usually tends to be around 317, and this is with everything, including an overgrip. So I'll land on some static weights between 311 grams up to 315, 316 grams, anywhere between them. And I'll change the swing weight between anything from 310 up to recently I experimented more with like 324, but with more lower static weight. And I'm not even paying attention to balance. I've never even measured the balance. I'm just mainly focus on the static weight plus the swing weight, and depends on how I feel in terms of my speed. If it's affecting my speed, then I'm going to probably change it. But if it's going to be more of if I can still feel that there's enough stability and power with that weight, then I will kind of consider those. And it also changes depending on what surface that I play on. So if it's a flatter playing surface or a faster playing surface, I might tend to go towards one of the slightly heavier static weights, because then I can kind of pound through the ball a little bit better. But if I'm playing on clay or hard court where I have to get my arm up with the high balls above my head, then I kind of have to like get more wrist action, more spin, those kinds of things. So a lower static weight would tend to help better with those, just because the E-Zone 100 is a thick racket, a very thick racket. So that's why I've moved to it instead of the standard version, mainly because you lower the weight to compensate for the lack of maneuverability. So the problems that I had with the E-Zone 100 in a standard weight was that I didn't have the same maneuverability as you would expect with any kind of like pure drive or FX 500. Lowering that weight gave me a lot more variability in the way I can swing, how fast I can swing, how well I can time to the ball, and then also like those kinds of flick shots and deep shots that I have to defend on. Those kind of open up the doors for me.
Yeah, we had quite tough time with these normal E-Zone 100 in terms of like getting that kind of flexibility and maneuverability without like getting the spec too high.
Yeah.
It's just like the racket definitely wants to swing one way, and I've been finding that same kind of thing with the V-Core 100 that's just come out as well. Is the going for a lighter racket spec, are you finding you recommend that more to players as opposed to the past?
I'd say just like it depends obviously on the personal preference. So if you're coming from something extremely heavy, then maybe the E-Zone 100 might not have that problem for you. But for me, I'm not like a huge, strong dude in the first place. And then you got people like Alcaraz and Sinner who are falling upon rackets that are like 330 grams or less, like Sinner's like around 325. Now I'm thinking like if these guys are fully fit, full professionals, and they're using 325 gram rackets, and I'm not exactly like as big as they are, then why wouldn't I just go for a lighter weight in a kind of what I term kind of like ratioing down a pro player's spec, but to like what I can handle. But you have to cross over the balance between what is suitable enough in terms of that it will like still hold stability and the racket's not going to fluff around. So in terms of like the new V-Core, for example, or maybe even the old V-Core, trying the 100L, it doesn't necessarily work exactly the same as the E-Zone 100L because the E-Zone is so thick to begin with that you can compensate some of that weight and still get away with a lot of the benefits the racket provides. Whereas the V-Core 100 is kind of like, it's kind of, I feel like it's meant to be played more at that stock weight. So you can't really, I tried it at like lower weights and it just doesn't kind of penetrate the court. It feels a little bit anemic. So it doesn't work exactly the same with all rackets in that sense.
Yeah. So like, I guess if you were to like give any kind of guidelines, like one of the famous quotes is like Andre Agassi is saying you should use the most powerful racket you can control. And at that time, that really meant also using the most heavy racket that you could kind of lug around with you. That's something that we've heard a lot. And also then using the lowest tension that you can control. Do you have any thoughts on how that kind of philosophy might be evolving with the game change?
Well, obviously, like you got the newer guys using lower weights, swinging faster. And what I've always tried to do with my own tennis throughout my life is that I've always tried to, like, this is not always good advice, but like to copy the pro scene, but like adapt to what the modern game is. So when I was like maybe 12 years old back in the early like 2000s, I was already using a full Western grip at that time, just because I saw like some people use it, and then I kind of adapted to that. And then over the time, I would change things and my technique would get better, especially in the last five or so years. So in terms of the weighting, it still depends on your swing. So if you got like really fast racket head speed, then you might benefit from maximizing that attribute. So you can't maximize that if you're using a bit of a heavier racket. And some people will say, like 5 grams doesn't make a difference. And like 5 grams for me personally can make a huge difference in terms of how fast I can swing a racket, even if I just add it to the handle. So with the E-Zone, for example, when I went down from like 315 to 310 static weight, like the amount of extra speed that I could generate was quite noticeable, and I gave it really good shots in actual match play tournaments and those kinds of things, and they all worked out fine. But that could also be attributed to the racket itself. Like I said, like not all lighter rackets may tend to be this good at the lighter weights. But yeah, overall, like you got people like Fonseca who still uses a reasonably heavier frame for today's game, and he can generate that racket head speed with that kind of weight still. So it's a very personal thing. It depends on how strong you are, how much are you affected by that weight or not.
Yeah. What do you think I should do? So I've been using my Rafas for a pretty long time, and in my head I wanna get something new because it's hard to like get new Rafas. They're such a specific racket. I still play by far my best tennis with them, and through our discussions, I've also gone down in weight while keeping the racket the same. So while you changed from a Gravity Pro to an Eason 100L, I had my Rafa spec'd up to like 338 swing weight strung. It was like 338 grams, and I've pulled out some weight just from all parts of the racket. So I took weight out of the bumper, which has also meant that I only have 2 usable rackets right now because the RAF is like a high swing weight stick generally. So it made one of them unusable. I took some weight out of the handle and also relocated some of the weight. So I'm at like unstrung spec my unstrung spec is still your strung spec. So it's, I'm like 311 unstrung. And then swing weight is like just below 330. I'm finding that a higher balance point, so I'm at like 333 balance point still, I can get away with a little bit of a heavier racket and still find the racket head speed. So for me, like one of the big discoveries that I've had this year in my game is the balance point matters a lot. And it doesn't matter so much when you're just tinkering with one racket in a way that you are more regularly than me. But it is because I'm trying so many rackets all the time. It really I've noticed just like really informs how certain rackets swing. Like more headlight has really been like detrimental for me.
Yeah. Well, I think like, that also on top of changing equipment, like I can change my swing on the fly as well. So
yeah,
like I played a final last Sunday, and I said like I used the Eason 100L for the first set. I won that set, and I switched to the 2026 VCore 100L. VCore 100. And the reason why I did that was because the problem with like our level of tennis is that we don't get to the luxury of playing with new balls. So yeah. So once the balls die especially in a long match, the whole game completely changes. So like that's one thing that I've noticed especially. So as an aggressive player, when I'm playing a match and I'm crushing the ball as hard as I can with the Eason 100, that works until it doesn't, because the balls change and then the whole game changes, and what happens is like you can't control the ball anymore because it loses its kind of like weight and its ability to kind of stay down on your shots. So then that's why I kind of like whip out a more spin friendly racket, is to increase the launch angle and to get more margin and more safety on my shot, whilst I still want like a powerful spin kind of friendly racket. And whilst like they do kind of swing differently, I think at least for my swing currently, it's a little bit more adaptable to multiple styles of rackets. Whereas like if I used my old swing with the Gravity Pro, like I would get stuck like a lot with different types of rackets depending on the weight.
Yeah, so like this kind of is related to, I've heard Jonas and the guy who does videos with sometimes Henrik talk a lot about having a 2-racket strategy. And I never really considered the ball thing where you get, but basically, second set you're using pretty dead balls. Are you usually switching to a new racket by the second set? Or how often are you playing with one throughout?
I mean, firstly, like not advice to be taken, because like I've been doing this for ages, so like it's not unnatural for me to go from a completely different racket and still play at a reasonable level. But the main thing was that I will do something until I feel it's not working. So like I versed a really good player the other week, and I was doing really well by like hitting very hard, hitting very aggressive on the lines. And then once the balls died, I just wasn't making them anywhere near as often. And then he started to like creep in back into the points. And then you also find that you can't aggress anymore, so you start holding back a little bit. And then by that point, I have to change equipment for my own sake, just to get something going, get something different going. And so my whole game plan can actually change from A to B in a completely different way. Whereas like A might be me just going flat, 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 but then B is like going very high ball, looping it, arcing it, and just like kind of throwing their rhythm off. So this year especially, I have been doing that a lot. Once I figure like what I'm doing in the first place doesn't work anymore. And this is usually against like very difficult players. So if I'm versing players around like closer to my own level, and not like kind of a couple steps above me, then I don't find that I kind of have to do that. But if I'm versing someone who, you know, like I'm winning points because of the power and the accuracy, but then once I can't do that no more, like, and they start figuring me out, then I have to change something. Right. But yeah, not necessary for most people. Like most people are going to get thrown off by the fact that you change equipment and all that. And like, you know, like sometimes technique has to be adjusted on the fly very fast.
Yeah.
But in terms of your equipment, going back to your question, I guess it's all about, you know, I guess when you pick up more matches and you find your weaknesses, essentially, like where are you thinking that you're losing the most points, and based on why through the equipment. Also, as you evolve your technique, as you've done over the last like year and a half, and kind of like got better and better, and your movements got better, like I think you have been able to compensate some of that weight through the racket, not having to let the racket do as much work for you because you're doing it yourself physically, and you're getting better technically and all that. So there's nothing, I wouldn't say there's like good advice that I could give you personally that, you know, because you already know equipment back and forth, back to front. So it's kind of like very personal for you. It's more for people who don't know what other rackets play like and all, then you might have to get more advice in that sense.
Do you have any like big advice, like for viewers who are maybe struggling to let go of something older and heavier, or who are stuck between a couple frames?
Well, I think there's like a traditional recommendation through just rackets in general that I've never agreed with for a long time, and that was like you should, like especially lower level players should be using a heavier racket, because what that does is that it restricts your freedom of movement, and for you to control the ball, you need as much freedom as possible to swing exactly how you want and make the racket move exactly how you want. So the heavier that you go, the more problems that you're going to have in terms of like being free, right? So that's why I've switched.
Like improvisation is
so like,
severely limited.
Exactly. So like with my one hand backhand, this year alone, I've been getting a ton of compliments from a lot of opponents. And that's because when I swing my backhand, I don't have just one type of swing. I have a swing almost for every single type of ball to attack or defend. And that's like, especially a lot of the ones that you're going to get as a one-hander is that you're going to get a deep one on the baseline, and you got to find a way to pick that up. And that's just not going to happen with like the regular E-Zone 100. Like I'm going to need to get this movement going on that, on the hand. But then with the E-Zone 100L, lowering that weight then I can do that like pretty effortlessly. And the stability, yeah, obviously you're gonna take a sacrifice on the amount that you have, but if you have better swing freedom, then you can probably time the ball better, get the middle of the racket more. So in that sense, a lot of people are probably, in my opinion, is that using rackets too heavy for them. Like if you're strong enough and you can use it, then that's like I don't mind that. But there's a lot of people that are probably using rackets that are too heavy, that they don't have that maneuverability that they really need, and that restricts them from being able to be more creative on defense and offense.
One last question along this vein. Is there anyone on tour who you'd like to be on their team advising in terms of rackets? We've seen like Jonas is in Tsitsipas' box now, so that could be you one day. Who do you think might need the most racket help?
It's a tough one. Probably like a Djokovic or something. Like if he was a bit younger, like even Murray made the switch, but obviously
he's still leaded the crap out of it.
Yeah. Very late though, but the thing with Murray was that he never used those changes to I guess benefit from what the racket provides. So when he tried to switch to that Prestige 99, was it MP?
The new thing.
He, instead of using that to use the bigger sweet spot to aggress more, he just kind of reluctantly kind of tapped everything in worse than he would with his PT57A. So when you change equipment like Fed did, you got to use the attributes of the racket to your advantage. And if you're not using the attributes of the racket, then that racket's probably not for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Fed really made the most out of his equipment change, and that's definitely something we can all learn from him. I personally wish that I could advise Zverev because I think his racket's a little bit too heavy.
I think from what I understand is that he did alter weightings on it. I'm not...
Oh, he did?
Especially when he went to the Gravity Tour, the old one.
Yeah.
Someone told me that he did kind of go lighter, but I didn't confirm that source. So,
it's just so hard to confirm the sources.
Yeah.
The thing that I saw was when he tried the Gravity Tour, he kept the specs the same. He needs so much time on his forehand, like 360 swing weight is tough to keep up.
And he just became more reluctant as well.
He was also decided to string at like 35 pounds or something crazy with the gut. It's tough to deal with.
Right, yeah.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Awesome.
This holiday afternoon for me, morning for you. If you, the viewers, have any questions for Allen or AC Tennis, you can leave them in the comments below.